Hey, I'm Kathleen Jasper, and today we're talking about 2025, some basic goals we can set for ourselves, for in our classroom and in our life to make this year the best. Keep it simple. Let's get started. All right, so it's 2025 and it's exciting. A new year, new possibilities, new things on the horizon. And I find that if I keep my goals for the new year simple, I set myself up for success and I have an easier time attaining those goals. Remember, we talk a lot about goals in education, and one of the biggest things is that they need to be attainable. We can't have these pie in the sky goals that set us up for failure. So I like to keep my goals to three simple things, and my three are going to help me be a better business person, make better content for you guys, and just to feel better overall. Now, you can use my goals or you can kind of build off of them. I'm going to show you what these goals look like in the classroom also, because I feel like the goals that I set for myself this year could definitely be applied in the classroom or as an administrator if you're outside of the classroom. So my first goal is to read more books, literature. I read a lot of technical documents and I scroll a lot of social media. I look at a lot of TikToks and YouTube videos and things like that, some for educational purposes and others not. I spend a lot of time scrolling, which I'm sure a lot of you do as well. So my goal is to read more literature. I have a Kindle Unlimited subscription that I use maybe once a month. I want to up that to more than once a month. I'm hoping for 2 or 3 books a month. Now, some people will set a crazy goal, like I want to read 10 books a month. I'm not going to do that to myself. Every time I do that, I end up going crazy. If I say, oh, I'm going to up my mileage by 20 miles a week, every week for the next year, it's just too much. I am right now reading about a book a month. That's not enough. I'm going to up it to over that. Now, I already started on my Kindle Unlimited subscription. I just scrolled through some books and I grabbed one and I'm reading it. And it's just like a nice little break. I slept better last night. It's something I should be doing. I need to cut out the news, cut out the TikToks, and give my mind a break and allow myself to get lost in some literature. And that's what I'm going to do. Now, I know you might be a teacher and say, I do not have time to read. Maybe, or maybe you do have time to read. I will tell you that when I read literature, I become more creative, I am less stressed, and I just have more ideas. So I'm going to do that for myself. Maybe you can apply that. Maybe you and your students can carve out 15 or 20 minutes for independent reading. Now, I'll tell you, when I did independent reading with my students, that was not the time for them to read and me to go to my desk and put in grades and do all this stuff. Because when I found that I told them to read independently, silently, and then I went to my desk and I started working, they stopped reading and started doing their work and started talking to their friend. But if I sat up in the front of the room and modeled independent reading with my book or with my Kindle, and I read for those 15, 20 minutes while they read, everybody participated. And so I highly recommend reading more books, reading more literature, doing independent silent reading, and modeling that for your students. So put that chair in the front of the room, grab your Kindle, grab your book, and read in front of your students. They will do what you do. So just a little recommendation there. The second thing that I'm going to do more of this year, I started last year and it was a game changer for me, is I am going to delegate more. Now, I've done this 2 ways. I've delegated a lot to AI. I've learned a lot about ChatGPT over the last 2 years. I've trained my chat bot to be a thought partner rather than just something that kind of spits out information. I think of it as a thought partner. And I've also delegated a ton of work to my staff. I have a staff of dedicated people. They're always itching for more work. And I have now delegated pretty much everything except recording videos. Obviously, I have to do that. Writing my books, because I'm the author of the books. I have to do that. And, just creating content. But I've even delegated some content creation to them because they've become very good at it. A lot of the blogs and captions and things like that, they're doing a great job with. I never thought in a million years I could delegate that stuff. I thought I had to do everything. And I know as teachers, we feel that way as well. I couldn't possibly give this over to students. I couldn't possibly give this over to somebody else. I have to do it myself or it just won't get done. That's not true. And it turns out when I delegate tasks to my staff, they actually do a better job. They have set up systems so that they can then have somebody else collaborate with them on it. I am no longer in that mess. They are, managing it for me, and they literally do a better job than I do. In fact, if I ever have to step in, I end up messing it up now. So I don't step in at all. It is theirs. And they have set up a system so that, if someone else comes onto the team, they can give them that system and they go through it. That's what's really important about delegation. So let's talk about it in the classroom. You are probably bogged down with writing your target on the board, your learning target on the board, passing out papers, taking attendance, all of these administrative tasks, right? There are ways in which you can delegate those tasks to your students. Let's talk about the learning target on the board. Maybe you find a student who really likes writing on the board. A lot of kids like writing on the board. They have good handwriting, whatever. You delegate that task for a week or a month to that student, writing the learning targets on the board. So you have them maybe print it out, whatever, and you give it to the student. I know a lot of teachers who hate writing their learning targets on the board. They get annoyed with it, but the principal is making them do it. Give it to a student. Give it to a student to do and allow them to do it. Maybe you do it on a Friday to do the next Monday, whatever it is, figure it out. You can figure out how to delegate that to the student. And maybe you give it to a student at the beginning of class, and then that student communicates the learning target. Remember, I told you, writing your target on the board does nothing. Communicating it and saying, hey, everybody, this is what we're responsible for today. That really helps. So maybe you have a student do that. Reciprocal teaching. Have a student take over that task and do that. And as you go through that, give them a system. First, write it on the board. Teach them how to do it. Don't just say, here's the learning target, write it on the board. Give them a system. And, maybe they do steps 1, 2, and 3 really well, but they kind of fell apart in steps 4 and 5. So you go back and revisit and say, hey, you did really well here. This is the part where I need you to do X, Y, and Z. Don't just say, see, no one can do it except for me. I got to take it back over. This is why I can't delegate. Don't do that. People need to learn how to do things to your expectations. So set the expectation, have a system of how they're going to do it, and then allow them to do it. Now you might say, it's too much work to train somebody else to do it. You're right. It is a lot of work to train somebody else to do it. I spent a lot of the first part of last year writing processes down on how I wanted things done and how I could delegate those tasks. But let me tell you, investing a little bit of time on the front end, kind of training my staff on how to do these things, literally took so much off my plate after that initial training that I am able to give more of my brain, my thoughts, my energy to creating impactful content for you. So I highly recommend get a few tasks out there, start small. Maybe it's passing out papers. Maybe it's writing the target on the board, whatever it is. Maybe it's passing back out the folders after you've graded them, whatever it is, even grading things. Have students switch papers. You don't have to take all that work home at night. Implement peer-reviewed writing workshops. Teach them how to grade papers and switch papers and really give good feedback to one another. It takes time, but man, it takes your tasks down 100 when you implement those and really take the time to train students. Figure that out. The other thing, you might have students who have a hard time behaving in class, who have, behavioral issues. When you give those students jobs, their behavior changes. I highly recommend finding the kid who cannot sit still and giving that kid a job, and not just like busy work, like a real job that takes something off your plate, because most of those kids are dying to be helpful. And when you say, wow, your handwriting looks great, and thank you so much for writing that learning target on the board. You just took 5 minutes off my day and I just really appreciate it. Now I have time to do something else. That kid will be like so excited. All of my behavior problems, when I gave them something to do and I told them that it helped me, they immediately changed. Their behavior changed. They wanted to help. That's all they wanted to do. They wanted to be useful. So delegate more in the classroom this year. I promise it will work out. Be patient. Don't take back the task. Be patient, train them, and allow them to be successful so you can go do other things that are really important. And my third and final New Year's goal is to create more content. And I want it to be meaningful and helpful. For the last few years, I've come from a place of how many people can I help? I want to help as many people as I can. And when I come from that space and that mindset, I produce better content, and I do help more people. And inevitably, it translates to selling more books and making more money and all of that. If I come from a place of, I want to make more money, I want to write more books so I can sell more books, I want to be YouTube famous, whatever, right? I never really reached those goals. But when I come from a place of how many people can I impact? I want to impact as many teachers as I can. I want to help as many prospective teachers and prospective administrators as I can. Now I want to help as many students as I can because I'm going to be working on some TikTok math and GED and some other new things. That brings me to new content, new students, new teachers, new areas, right? And it all comes from a place of service. And so I recommend you try that in your classroom as well. How can I help my students? Too many times we get bogged down in education, and I completely understand because I was a teacher, with all of the administrative stuff that gets thrown at us from the district, from the state, and all of that. And I'm not saying abandon those things because that is part of your job. But I always like to separate things like what is helping people and what is not. And I like to focus on what is helping people. I'll get to this other stuff, and you don't have to throw 100% of your effort behind it either. Some of those things that come from the district and the state just need to be checked off the list, right? So do that when you can, and then focus on how you're going to help your students. Here's one thing that I found in the classroom when I was teaching that I went back to. I went back to the basics. I had been bogged down with all this professional development on cooperative learning and Kagan strategies and Cornell notes and all this stuff, right? And they wanted us to implement all this stuff. And it became so overwhelming to me and my students. They didn't know what was going on. I went back to a basic structure of teaching that I knew worked and that my kids liked. I surveyed them. They loved direct instruction. They loved read aloud, think aloud, because they got to sit in their seats, absorb some of that information, and engage when they were ready. Cooperative learning, they didn't love because they felt put on the spot if they weren't kind of social beings. Also, some people felt they did all the work and other people didn't. Maybe cooperative learning is working really well in your classroom and that's what you want to keep doing. Fine. I found that my students, and they were high school students, liked to kind of work independently and they liked direct instruction. So I went back to direct instruction. It was so much easier. I'm in the front of the room. I've got a PowerPoint. We're talking about it. I'm asking high level questions. You're answering high level questions. You're raising your hand. We're having discussions. We're reading aloud. We're discussing the text. Just good old fashioned basic stuff. My scores went up, kids were happy, I was happy. I spent less time, doing all of that. It was much better. So I highly recommend going back to basics. Abandon anything that's just taking too much time. And if you found a strategy you really like, but there's some glitches in it or whatever, keep working at it. Keep working at it. Make it one of your staples if you really believe in that strategy. But if it's just too much, like abandon it. Forget it. I I left a lot of things. I didn't do a lot of things because I wanted to reach my kids in a way that would help them. And I had to get rid of the fluff. And that's just the way it is. And guess what? I didn't get fired. My instruction actually got better because I was improving on the basics and it was just a better situation for everybody. So I highly recommend that. I'm doing that now too. I'm going back to basics. I've delegated pretty much everything. And now I can go back to, some of the things that I really like to do in terms of my content creation. Now, these might work for you or they might not. A couple other suggestions are maybe you decide you want to really master Chat GPT because that is going to help you with your delegation. Delegate stuff to Chat GPT. Maybe you have been a little bit afraid of it or you're like, I don't know. Jump in there. I'm telling you, 2025 is your year to work with AI. It's a game changer. I delegate so much to AI. I have trained my chatbot to be a think partner, a thought partner. I have done a lot with AI and I'm very happy I did. Don't be afraid of it. Maybe that's one of your goals, just to try some things. Maybe have it do your lesson plans or give you some ideas on what to do in the classroom. Just try it. It's not going to hurt. Another, goal you might have is to not take work home on the weekends. Maybe you stick to that on Friday. Whatever's not done, you leave it in your classroom and you turn your computer off. Trust me. It will be fine. It will be fine. You can leave it there. You do not have to bring that home with you. Maybe your goal is to work your contract hours, meaning you leave when your contract hours are up. There is nothing wrong with this. In fact, most teachers I know who are very happy work their contract and then they go home. And you might say, there's no way I can do that. Yes, there is. There's plenty of ways you can do that. You can delegate more and you can focus on things that really work, which will reduce the number of hours you need to be at school. So start slow. Maybe you say, you know what, I'm going to work my contract hours once a week. So maybe on a Wednesday, I'm going to leave right at whatever it is, 2:30, whenever your contract is up, right? And I don't care how much I've done. I'm going to turn off my computer. I'm going home and that's it. Okay? Do it. Maybe it's a Friday. Whatever you want it to be, do that. And then add a day and add a day. And before you know it, you'll be just working your contract hours. You do not need to work more than you are paid for. The only person making you do that is you. And I understand you have a lot of work, but guess what? If it's not done during your contract hours, you are not obligated to do it. There is a teacher shortage. You are not going to get fired for not working till 8 o'clock every night in your classroom. Let it go. Live your life. Be happy. Meet your students where they are, inspire them, challenge them, be their best teacher that you can possibly be, and then go home and be with your family and do all the things you have to do at home and delegate at home too. If you can delegate to your kids, delegate to your husband, or maybe you don't have anybody to delegate to. Maybe you can sign up for an Instacart membership. I know it's expensive, but well worth it in my opinion. I hate grocery shopping. If there are things you can do to delegate those tasks, do it so that when you get home, things are better. And remember, goals are constantly moving. Goals, some are attainable, some aren't. Sometimes you get towards a goal and you're like, whoa, I'm not going to meet this goal. I need to pull it back a little bit. That's okay. It's totally fine. These things are not set in stone. It's just an exciting way to start the year. There's no reason to be upset if you don't meet one or more of these goals. We're going to try it. We're going to keep it simple. And if it works, great. If not, we can set new goals. We can modify goals. It's our life. We can do whatever we want. All right, that's it. Hope you have a wonderful start to your year for 2025. I am building more products, more webinars, all kinds of things. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it and have an awesome day.